What's up, all you fantastic fans out there, and welcome to the Blindside Blitz podcast for Monday, April 6th, 2020. I've got a great show lined up for you today, and I'm thrilled to dive into the NFL with you guys, but before I do, I want to remind you to check out the website and social media for the podcast to be able to stay connected. You can visit the website at theblindsideblitzpodcast.weebly.com. The username on Facebook and Instagram is at the Blindside Blitz Podcast, and on Twitter, I am at _Blindside Blitz. Look, if you like the show today, don't keep it to yourself. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your fantasy football commissioner, tell your weird neighbor across the street, tell your grandma, tell everyone, so that they can get some of the dulcet tones of my voice as well. If you don't like it, though, that's fine. No hard feelings. I respect your choice and encourage you, to seek out a different podcast that fits your liking. But if you don't like me, though, just keep it to yourself. It's all right. Don't hold a grudge. It's okay. I still love you just the same. Now, without further ado, let's jump into today's episode of the podcast and discuss some free agency. Let's go. It's Monday. It's April 6th. And it's 2020, the year of quarantine. And what feels like day 973, at least, even though it's only been a couple of weeks. I'm not sure if this year will ever end. I'm not sure if this month will ever end. I don't know what day it is without checking my phone. It's rough. Somebody please tell me if it's not Monday, April 6th. Because to the best of my knowledge it is, but I really don't know anymore. There's day and night. There's, morning and evening. That's pretty much all I know. Difficult to figure things out right now. I'm coming to you from my home studio, a place where I have been for most of the past couple of weeks, probably 90% of the time, because I'm staying at home, I'm practicing safe social distancing, and I hope you guys are too. Stay home, stay safe, stay healthy, all that good stuff. And we should be so grateful that free agency is still happening, because for a little bit of time there was a possibility that at least part of it would be shut down. I was a little scared. Roger Goodell might shut some of free agency down with all the postponements and cancellations of other major sports leagues. Now, it wouldn't have really made sense to, because a lot of it happens remotely anyways, and I'm glad he didn't, because now we have stuff to talk about. Right? This is a time period we should no longer take for granted, ever again, in the future, because it has given us content and given us stuff to discuss in the midst of this trying time for everybody in the world, not just here in America. So we're going to be getting into the National Football League. Over the next couple of months, we'll be getting through every team in the NFL to talk about their free agency period, to grade it, talk about what the future of their team's going to look like. We're going to discuss the team's biggest needs, their biggest signings, their biggest moves. There's been a lot of stuff that's happened. We've had some big trades, big free agent signings, and I know I say this every year, but man, what a free agency period 2020 has been so far. I feel like this is, once again, one of the most insane free agency periods in recent history. We have learned a lot. We have discovered new things and solidified ideas that we had in our minds. Bill O'Brien has established himself as the resident nutcase of the National Football League. We have found out that teams are sort of treating Tom Brady as someone who's not worth it. And, the Kansas City Chiefs, they have no money. They have basically no money at all, no cap space. And they're going to try to bring everybody back to make another run at the championship, make another run at the Super Bowl. We'll see how that turns out. A lot of stuff to talk about. We're going to go one team at a time. I really appreciate you guys joining me for the ride. And I want to hear from you, because I'm going to talk about a lot of different things. So let me know when I say something crazy, because I will. I will say stuff that you're going to think is ridiculous. So I want to hear from you. Give me stuff to talk about as well. It's a tough time we're going through, but we are going to stick together, push through, and we will come out of this stronger than ever and never take the NFL for granted again, I don't think, after this is over. But enough small talk. Let's get to today's episode. Up on the docket today, we have the Carolina Panthers. And the Carolina Panthers right now are a really fascinating team in free agency. And it's a team that people aren't really talking about. I'm not sure why. They didn't sign any maybe huge name free agents, which is probably the reason. And they didn't make any major trades But they deserve as much attention as any other team because the stuff they're doing here on the roster is fascinating. It's going to have a major impact on the league landscape as a whole. Bullet points, huge turnover in the passing game, right? Big change up there. They shipped out their top two quarterbacks. Cam Newton and Kyle Allen are gone. They got two new quarterbacks. We'll talk about them in a little bit. Their roster right now is being comprised of lots of low-cost, low-risk options. There's a lot of young, cheap up-and-comers, dark horses. This has the potential to be a really exciting rebuilding team. The question is, how long is it going to take? Because I don't think they're going to come together as a team to be super competitive this year, but there's a lot of potential here for this team. So we will see how long it will take. And I'm going to start in the quarterback position because they lost their top two quarterbacks and brought in two new guys. Cam Newton and Kyle Allen are gone. They are out of Carolina. Kyle Allen is with the Washington Redskins, and who knows where Cam Newton's going at this point. Right? I really didn't want to make this a Cam Newton podcast, but you can't talk about the Panthers right now without talking about Cam Newton. Lots of tension between these two. Cam Newton claims the Panthers did him dirty. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. Get off your high horse, Cam. Cam is done. Cam is washed up. He'll be lucky if a team signs him. I mean, I think that one team will, but only as a backup. He's had too much of an injury history as of late. He's not as tough as we think he is. He's been inaccurate, and he hasn't been as strong of a rusher as he was in his early years. It's weird. It seems like Cam Newton is so old. He's 31. It just seems like Cam Newton is a really old guy right now. And I don't know why, other than he just hasn't produced like we thought he would. And, I mean, they are replacing him with younger guys now, too, which is interesting. But, yeah, dating back to Super Bowl 50 when Cam Newton did not dive for that loose fumble in the middle of the game against the Broncos, I lost a lot of respect for him. The guy talked a lot. He was a very prominent character in the National Football League, had a lot of charisma, and they peaked there, and he had a lot more potential, I think, and that just hasn't come to fruition. So Cam Newton's done. His career is on the brink of falling off the cliff completely, and it's going to completely crumble very soon. People are talking about destinations for him: Patriots, Chargers, Dolphins. As a starter, no. The Patriots know who they're going with. The Chargers would not be a good fit. The Dolphins are probably going to get somebody in the draft. Cam Newton is not going to be a starter in the National Football League. I would be shocked if he ends up being a starter at some point this year. Some team will pick him up. They'll sign him as a backup or something. But he doesn't have his rushing ability really like he used to, and that was one of his big claims to fame. He has really, really fallen mightily. How the mighty have fallen. Cam Newton definitely exemplifies that. We'll see where he ends up. It'll be interesting. But they bring in Teddy Bridgewater, and Teddy Bridgewater, formerly of the New Orleans Saints, for a 3-year, $63 million contract. He's reuniting with his former offensive coordinator, Joe Brady, which is a really important thing to notice here. The Panthers are going to probably run a lot of West Coast spread shotgun types of offenses to sort of stick with what Joe Brady did with the Saints, and it'll work with Teddy Bridgewater as well. Bridgewater's 4 years younger than Cam Newton. He's more efficient. He doesn't really have a cannon for an arm, but he has been effective. 5-0 as a starter for the Saints this past year. He's steady. He is not super flashy, but he is mobile. This is a really excellent football move and could turn into be a sneaky fantasy sleeper as well. What else is interesting, though, in terms of the quarterback position, is who they're bringing in to back him up. P.J. Walker, formerly of the Houston Roughnecks in the XFL. This guy was the league MVP before they shut down the season. He led the Roughnecks to a 5-0 start, and he was going to be the most valuable player in that league had not they shut down the season due to coronavirus. This guy's tough. He's a competitor. He's the first player from the XFL that was signed to a team in the NFL. They signed him for a 2-year contract of about $1.6 million. What's another interesting point to notice here is that he's being reunited with his head coach Matt Rule, who he played for at Temple in 2013 to 2016. Similar playing style to Bridgewater here. This will be a lot of competition for Bridgewater, and PJ Walker's a tough guy. Right? He's a hard worker. We don't know how his XFL experience is going to translate necessarily yet, but we'll find that out before too much longer. I wouldn't be surprised if PJ Walker lives up to his potential that we see him in a starting role next year and possibly even taking the starting gig away from Teddy Bridgewater at some point. That's an interesting thing to think about because they wouldn't have to change much in the offense. Very similar playing styles. And PJ Walker could take advantage of the injury history that Teddy Bridgewater has had over the past few years. So that'll be an interesting storyline to follow. So 2 in, 2 out. Keep following Cam Newton, but the guy's career is over. Don't try to tell me it isn't. Even Kyle Allen found a new starting gig. Well, a new starting gig. Even Kyle Allen found a new team before Cam Newton did. He's on the Redskins right now, and nobody knows where Cam Newton is going to end up. Sticking with the passing game, Robbie Anderson. The Panthers bring in Robbie Anderson on a 2-year, $20 million deal from the Jets. Another guy that played with new head coach Matt Rule at Temple from 2013 to 2015. It's clear what the Panthers are trying to do here. They want to bring in players that are familiar with the coach's systems. Bridgewater coming in, offensive coordinator's Joe Brady, familiar with his system, has played with him before. Robbie Anderson, another guy bringing in that's going to be able to work nicely with Matt Rule, played with him at Temple. The risk here is the price tag a little bit, $20 million deal for 2 years, but they know who they wanted. He's fast, ran a 4.36 at the combine, caught almost 50, well, he caught 52 passes for almost 100 yards and 5 touchdowns for the Jets. This is a really good football move. I don't like it for fantasy purposes because he's not going to be the focal point of the offense like he was, the focal point of the passing game like he was with the Jets. They added some more depth. Seth Roberts, Pharaoh Cooper signed to 1-year deals. Pharaoh Cooper will be nice on special teams. Seth Roberts is a great blocker as well. But in terms of the receiving core, Bridgewater's going to have some guys to throw to. Curtis Samuel, and Robbie Anderson are going to be a great duo on the outside. Anderson is going to really help to open up this defense. The offense. He'll be able to exploit defenses more often here. Stock up for DJ Moore as well. DJ Moore is a slot guy, the possession receiver. And his role is not going to change. In fact, given the fact that Teddy Bridgewater is very much of a short and intermediate passer, one might even say DJ Moore is going to have an even better year. His stock is probably up, I would say, because his role will remain the same. He'll be the primary pass catcher. Curtis Samuel and Robbie Anderson will be able to use their speed to open up and take the tops off of defenses. It'll be a fascinating receiving core to watch, but again, lots of change here. So we'll see how that plays out. Running back right now, their strongest position, Christian McCaffrey. They've got a little bit of depth at running back as well, which is nice. Tight end is a need. Greg Olsen is gone. Not that he was doing that much beforehand, but he's a prominent figure in Panthers culture. He was a veteran presence. He is on the Seattle Seahawks now. So Ian Thomas is the starter. They signed Seth DeValve from Jacksonville for depth. Another major need is offensive line. They lost a lot of offensive linemen, both starting guards. Greg Van Roten went to the Bills. Pro Bowler Trey Turner went off to the Chargers. They lost their tackle Darrell Williams to the Bills. Lots of Bills players now. The Panthers lost a lot of players to the Bills this year. It'd be interesting. Interesting little note there, little nugget of information. They did pick up left tackle Russell Okung from the Chargers in a trade for Trey Turner. They picked up John Miller from the Bengals. That was a low-risk signing. The offensive line is probably going to be very porous this year. We're probably going to see a lot of Teddy Bridgewater and his scrambling abilities. In terms of the defense, though, this is where things get rough if you are a Panthers fan, and a little bit scary. The Panthers, their biggest departure was not Cam Newton. Cam Newton has not been involved in a successful Panthers team for a while now. No, it's Luke Kuechly. Luke Kuechly is the man in Carolina and will continue to be the man in Carolina even after he retired before the age of 30, which I think is really interesting, talking about why Luke Kuechly retired. That's their biggest loss. You don't replace Luke Kuechly. You just don't. They're going to bring in guys to try to replace him. One of their biggest signings on the defensive side of the ball was linebacker Tyre Whitehead. They signed him to a 1-year deal. This is another guy that played for Matt Rule at Temple, and he's more of a low-risk sign to fill what is now, it's become a very big need at linebacker. Whitehead's versatile. Kuechly was versatile too. Kuechly played all over the place. Inside, outside, upside down. Whitehead is an outside linebacker. Kuechly primarily played middle, so it'll be interesting to see how they work that out. But boy, the Panthers' defense. Last year, the Panthers' defense was second to last in the league in terms of points allowed. They allowed almost 30 points per game. Yeah. They're losing Luke Kuechly. Not only are they losing Luke Kuechly, but they're losing other very important defensive pieces. Defensive end Bruce Irvin is off to the Seahawks. Defensive tackle Dontari Poe is on the Cowboys. They lost some guys in the secondary. Eric Reed, safety, cornerback Ross Cockrell. They lost James Bradbury to the Giants. And they lost some defensive ends to the Bills as well. Vernon Butler and Mario Addison. The 2020 Buffalo Bills is going to look a lot like the 2019 Carolina Panthers. That'll be interesting. They took at least 4 or 5 of their players this year. But in a nutshell, the Panthers' defense was very bad last year. So you can't look at me and tell me the Panthers are going to have a good defense this year, which is really going to hinder them. It's going to hold them back. The defense is going to be in a rebuilding mode as well, because they have very few players returning. One guy that they did bring back, free safety Trey Boston, which this was an important sign because you don't want to have a completely new team. So this was one guy they were able to keep around 3 years, $18 million. He had a pretty good year last year, 68 tackles, 3 interceptions. So that was an important player to re-sign as well. They also grabbed a defensive end in Stephen Weatherly for a 2-year deal. He's 25, versatile, and it'll be a good fit for Phil Snow, the defensive coordinator, and how he likes to use his defensive schemes. They should keep playing in a 3-4 defense, would be my guess. All that being said, offensive line is a need. Tight end is a need. Defense is a major need. I would expect them to really attack that aspect in the draft. The offense, just using the eyeball test, the offense doesn't look bad. The offense looks like it'll be okay. But when you have what looks to be an average offense with a lot of moving pieces and a lot of new players and a new coaching regime as well, it's going to be really, really interesting. Right? The coach, the quarterback, and the arguably number one wide receiver, probably will be the number 2 option, Robbie Anderson. These are all new players. Christian McCaffrey is the one key cog that's sticking around, the important guy, and the offense will continue to go through him. There's a chance McCaffrey has an even better year this year, to be honest, with how much they're going to be using him. And Teddy Bridgewater is really good for Christian McCaffrey. Lots of dink and dunk passes. DJ Moore is also going to be able to catch a lot of short slants, intermediate passes. But I don't think the offense is going to be potent enough to be able to be a powerhouse this year. That brings me to my record prediction, 6-10 for the Carolina Panthers. This is a tough division they're playing in the NFC South. The Panthers are going to have to play Matt Ryan twice a year, Drew Brees twice a year, and now Tom Brady twice a year. There's a chance they don't win any more than 1 or 2 games in their division. That is a very real possibility. I don't expect them to be competitive in this division. 6-10 might be a little generous. They could very easily be a playoff team in a few years. You expect Tom Brady and Drew Brees to retire before too much longer. And the Panthers are potentially rebuilding for a big run at the division title in the next couple of years. But for now, needs in the draft, they need to bulk up on defense, get some of their linebackers around Tyre Whitehead, revamp the secondary, get a couple more offensive linemen, target DJ Moore in fantasy football. That's another element. This Panthers passing game with DJ Moore and Teddy Bridgewater, they could be a couple of good sleepers. And again, Christian McCaffrey, this is a great bump for him. Teddy Bridgewater is going to really help him in terms of his skill set and what he's able to do. This is a step up from Kyle Allen. Teddy Bridgewater is clearly better than Kyle Allen, and it's going to help the offense as a whole this year for the Carolina Panthers in 2020. That's going to do it for today's podcast. Thanks for joining me to talk about the Carolina Panthers. I hope you are all staying safe, healthy, staying at home, practicing safe social distancing. Thanks for joining me for today's podcast, and I will see you next time as we move down the road talking about the NFL teams in free agency. I'm Caleb Steindale, and this is the Blindside Blitz podcast. Peace out!